way. Your job's a joke, you broke, your love life's the away. It's like you're always stuck in second gear, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your year.
Julie Landsman comes from a white background that was challenged when she decided to change her women's college for an integrated one in Washington, D.C. Because of her experiences at the integrated college, she changes her culturally limited perspective to a less conventional, culturally inclusive perspective on teaching. Landsman describes how she began to include content that reflects her students' daily lives in order to reignite their interest in learning to push back on the Eurocentric curriculum. Landsman narrates an average day of teaching and includes moments in which she reflects upon herself from her own work and experiences with urban schools. Landsman explicitly voices her views about race and poverty by sharing stories directly from urban school students, elaborating specifically on the struggles her students face, as well as the perspective of a teacher. Overall, Landsman highlights the complexities of teaching in a diverse society and detailing solutions to modify current oppressive institutions.
Landsman considers and appreciates all of the diverse cultures she had the opportunity to cross paths with throughout her teaching career. She has seen the systemic racism in the schooling system and how teachers, as individuals, can make the students feel as more a part of the community, where benefits are shared equally. She calls for more diverse teachers in the classroom to bring to light more deeper social issues so we can grow together and move forward to advance justice.
For my artifact, I'll be showing and talking about the importance of my Kairos cross. I got the cross at a retreat I went on with my high school during my senior year. It has been a tradition in our high school for a long time, and it all started with the Jesuits. The Jesuits at University of Detroit High School showed us how to carry on the goals and values of Catholics everywhere. It has been special to see how the Jesuit traditions are carried on here at Marquette, especially through our service learning reflection sessions. In the service learning reflection session, What Would St. Iggy Do?, the leaders talked about how carrying on the Jesuit values involves fighting against injustices, taking care for the less fortunate, and caring for a person as a whole. I think that ties in well with the book because that is essentially what Landsman has done each day she has stepped in the classroom. She is the model example of what each teacher should strive to be.
In White Teacher Talks About Race, Landsman addresses stereotypes against Black students and why teachers have difficulty engaging them in the classroom. Coming from a white background, Landsman doesn't know how to guide Black students because she's grown up in a cultural bubble that has perpetuated the oppression of Blacks and prevented her from learning about them. She claims that racial stereotypes arise from cultural ignorance and prevents teachers from effectively teaching students of color. She sought to bridge this gap by familiarizing herself with Black culture. For my artifact, I chose this hip-hop album by Mo Thugs. Music is integral to all cultures, and the hip-hop genre is unique to Black culture. Music transcends the messages and values of people through catchy lyrics and beats. This album addresses segregation, poverty, and police brutality, similar to what Landsman's students have experienced. Preston, who is constantly harassed by police because of his skin color. A 17-year-old single mother who is a product of the systems that put her in this situation and keep her oppressed. So, through listening to different genres of music, we can acquire cultural intelligence. And as teachers, cultural intelligence is important. To become an effective teacher, you must be aware of who your students are, you must include culturally relevant content in the classroom, and create a rich, engaging learning environment.
Landsman demonstrates how seeing students holistically not only makes you a better educator, but a better person overall. Seeing students for who they are as learners, family members, and overall members of society gives the students respect and opens the gates for students to respect the educator. The elephant is the perfect representation of this. If three blind men were to try to identify the animal, one might confuse it for a tree while feeling on his leg, a rope while pulling on his tail, and a spear while grabbing on his tucks. Just as the men have created their own identity of the elephant, the education system has created identities for students. Labeling students upon one quality, such as reading, not only covers up the student's potential, but it blinds the teachers from seeing the student for who they are and skills not tested, such as the ability to pay bills and care for another life. What the men find once they respect the elephant for all that it is, they will be stunned by how small they thought of the elephant. It is this feeling that is also prevalent when teachers give their students more consideration. Landsman understood each and every one of her students' situations, Sheila's role as a mother who would do anything for a child, Tyrone's drive to help his family, and with getting to know them, Landsman, in return, made herself open to the class. This connection created a healthy environment in the classroom aside from the hurdles that came to the students outside of the classroom.
A big thing that Landsman talks about and stresses the importance of is seeing yourself in the others around you. For my artifact, I chose to bring in a mirror as a representation of this, to look at yourself in a different light, in someone else's shoes, and to relate to them. Landsman points out the many differences of her students, whether it be related to race, socioeconomic status, or circumstances, and explains how as a teacher it is important to imagine yourself in their position and work with them accordingly. Something I found very important that Landsman pointed out was that each person walks into the classroom with their own story. Although she may not know all of her students' full stories, she can understand them. Landsman made it apparent that she grew up much differently than many of her students. She attended a boarding school and almost never came into contact with someone that was not white, Protestant, and wealthy. Although this was her upbringing and what she knew from the beginning part of her life, she shares with us that through this novel, how she grew as she entered college and later the workplace in her beliefs and how students and people in general should be viewed and treated. She also talks about how the students see themselves in the people around them. She highlights that people relate to others who are more like them in regards to race or gender. It is important for students to have role models in which they relate to because it makes them feel more comfortable and also gives them the hope that they can amount to the same success in the future.
One of the most influential and powerful elements in A White Teacher Talks About Race by Julie Landsman stated just how essential it is to see minorities in the everyday. I decided to create a portrait of Marsha P. Johnson because her story is powerful and should be incorporated into education. Marsha P. Johnson was a primary instigator during the Stonewall riots, a catalyst for future protests on LGBTQ+ equal rights, as well as being an activist in other civil rights issues. As a Black trans woman, Johnson faced huge backlash and harassment not just from white people, but from other minorities as well. Yet, she continued to fight for what she believed in, equality for all. I believe Johnson's story should be incorporated into history curriculums in order to destigmatize preconceived ideas on minorities, just as how Landsman argued and pushed for more inclusiveness in history in order to incorporate the raw truth of those ignored by racism. Johnson's intersectionality would be able to inspire a large group of people and would also exemplify just how important it is to give minorities a position in modern-day culture, whether it be in a classroom curriculum or a position in legislation. With strong people such as Johnson, we can incorporate diversity in all professions and curriculums to give representation to those who have none. This is what Landsman means by seeing minorities in the everyday, to give them a voice in our everyday lives so that students are able to see that education is not only for white people. So often, we are taught the history of the winners, usually white males, and so often we are never told the story of those oppressed by institutions created by these white males. The erasure of minorities from history has answered the question of if we should tell their stories, and forces us to now determine when we should tell them. And the time is now, thanks to trailblazers in activism such as Marsha P. Johnson.